Alright, Mike is asking, can you use the slope solver to solve angle for the SMA 5? Yes, we sure can. Let's see. Alright, so let's take care of that. So I'm going to make a new logic template here. Okay. Alright, so we want to look for the angle of the SMA 5. And alright, so I'm going to take the SMA I have on here, I'll change it to a 5. Alright, so the white line is our SMA 5. So, alright, going back to our logic template here. So I'm going to go to the, right, you'll notice here under the solver nodes I have multiple other sub menus, right? So I have existing nodes, and I have a default time frame, and I have a daily time frame. So, right, I want to use the SMA on our 1 minute chart here, right? So we're working on a 1 minute chart. So remember, our 1 minute chart is the default time frame because that's what BloodHound's running on. So I'm going to go to solver nodes. I'm going to go to the default time frame, and I'm going to select our slope solver. I'll plug that in like that. So right now the default settings for the slope solver is it's just looking to see if the SMA is sloping up or sloping down. But right now it's looking at the SMA 14, so let me change that. Alright, so we have the SMA already loaded in there, and we're just going to change it to a 5 period. Alright, so we got an SMA 5 loaded into the slope solver, and I'm going to change the name on this to the SMA 5. And so to look for specific angles or specific slopes, right, we have a maximum and a minimum slope here. And so typically what people want to do is they just want to kind of remove a flat slope. So I just put in here, I just put 5 ticks in here, for example, and I'll put 5 ticks in that one too. And if we look at the chart here, right, we can see that when our SMA kind of flattens out a little bit, right, there's no output, right, there's no BloodHound output, and only when the SMA has a pretty good slope on it, right, so you can see here the SMA is sloping up pretty good, so we're getting a long output, or the SMA, oh, sorry, my mouse keeps double clicking on this, and when the SMA is sloping down, we get a short output. So if you want to find like a very specific slope, we can do that. So what I'm going to have to do is let's see if we can find a let's see, the chances of finding like an exact slope are pretty slim, so let's kind of vary these two. So let's see if we can find a slope from 0.45 to 0.5. You know, that's a pretty good range there. So the next thing we'll have to do is come down to our output section, right? So you can see this output section, and so if we're trying to find, you know, like a specific slope range or a specific kind of angle, then we want to turn the greater than slope off, right? Let me click off here. there we go. So you see how the text, so we have this output here that says greater than 0.5 ticks. So if you're trying to find a specific angle, you don't want to know if the SMA 5 is greater than that angle. So we're going to turn that off. And so what we're looking for is when the angle is at 0.5. So this will find an angle exactly at 0.5, which, let's see, I'll take a quick look through the chart. I doubt we're going to get anything. Yeah, we're not getting anything. So what you're also going to want to use is at 0.45 as well. So we're going to set that to 1. And now hopefully we should find something here. Alright, still not finding anything, so let me loosen up the constraints here. So let's go 0.6 to 0.4, and there we go. Okay, now we're starting to get something, right? So the SMA on these bars, the SMA has that angle. All right, it has that angle from 0.4 to 0.6 sloping angle there. So, there you go. So now we're finding very specific slope angles. All right, so the key was to setting a range, right? So we're going to set a minimum slope angle, and we're going to set a maximum slope angle, and then we had to come down here to our outputs and adjust our outputs, right? So we set the greater than output, we set it to 0, so we turned it off, and then we turned on the at 0.5 and the at 0.45. Well, actually, let me get those updated there. So if I click off and click back on, now we can see that the slope amount has changed, updated here. So we turned on the at 0.4, we set that to 1, and the at 0.6 was set to 1, right? But the top one and the bottom one, the less than and the greater than, we turn those off, and that's how we can find a specific angle. And all right, yeah, looks like that took care of it for Mike. Okay, great, thanks, Mike. Mark has a question about building a stop. So Mark, it's not technically going to be a stop, it's going to be an exit signal. With Raven has exit signals which will close you out of the trade, but it's not a stop, right? So a stop, basically the difference is, right, is a stop works in real time. So when price comes down and touches your stop price, right, you're closed out. Whereas an exit logic will close out the trade when certain conditions happen, when the bar closes, right? So just as, Raven, typically the way Raven's set up is Raven will enter a trade when the bar closes and the signal is given. Well, an exit signal will close out the trade when the bar closes and an exit signal is generated. So I'll show you how to do what you want to do, Mark, and it's going to be an exit logic. All right, so let me get connected to my data feed here. And okay. Let's see, let's get our chart set up. And let's see. don't think, yeah, since we had to crash Ninja, none of my settings got saved. Alright, so let's, let me rebuild my template, or rebuild my chart here. Alright, and let's load up today's workshop file into BloodHound. Okay, great. So I think we're back to where we were here. Right now, Mark is using the backtest Renko, which is what I have on the chart here already. So let me. So it looks like I got my chart set up. So what Mark wants to do, is he's using the ALMA moving average. Let's see. So Mark, what is the ALMA moving average? I'm not familiar with that. I'm not sure if that's an acronym or if that's the actual name of the indicator. So what Mark wants to do is he wants to take this moving average, and so he wants to close out the trade when the full candle touches that moving average. Or yeah, so when the full, I guess Mark, when you're saying the full candle, you probably, I'm assuming you mean the body of the candle. So when the body of the candle is touching your moving average, that's when you want to close out the trade, because Mark's saying he doesn't want to stop out when the wick touches the moving average. So I'm assuming that you mean the body of the candle touches the moving average. And so he's using the backtest Renko with wave mode turned off. So that's what we see on our chart here. So this is with wave mode turned off, so it's in backtest mode. So you can see the body of the candles and the wicks. So and oh, okay. So let's see. Great. There is the link for the indicator, and all right. So I'm going to grab this link and try and find this indicator here. So I'm going to put the link in here for everybody else. So here's the link to that ALMA indicator, and let's pull up our web browser. Okay, yeah, that's right. So here's the screenshot that Mark prepared for me. All right, yeah, so that's pretty self-explanatory. All right, so we don't want to stop when the wicks touch, but just when the body touches. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's see if we can get that indicator. Oh. So let's see what we get. There we go. Okay. The ALMA moving average. All right. And let's see. I'll save that in the downloads area. Alright, we'll get that imported here quickly. Actually, let me just double check and see, maybe I already have that installed. No, it does not look like it. Okay. Alright, so we'll get this installed and get going. There we go. There's our ALMA indicator. Alright, we'll just use the default settings here. And let's see, I'm going to make the plots a little thicker so you guys can see it easily. Alright, let's get this on here. Alright, so it's our blue line. Oh, is the ALMA. The blue line there. So let's see. So we want to let's draw some arrows on here. So we want to. All right. So that'll be a stop. So whenever the full body touches the ALMA, that'll be a stop. And who knows? It's hard to tell, but one of these bars could also be a stop as well. It's really hard to tell. Right? It depends on the indicator setting, or it depends on the indicator value right there. It's really close to the open price of the bar, so it's really close to being in the body of the bar. Let's see here. Mark's got specific bar settings here. Alright, so Mark is using a reversal of 7, so let's do that. So Mark, there is no brick size when you're back testing, right? Brick size only applies to like a standard Renko, but a back testable Renko doesn't have a brick size. So really this is going to do nothing unless I turn wave mode on, and then the bricks will all be 5 ticks in length or 5 ticks in size. But when you're in back test mode, the brick size doesn't do anything. But we'll change the reversal to 7 there. Alright, and you can tell that the brick size doesn't do anything because looking at that, right, that brick has no body, so the brick size definitely is not doesn't do anything when it's in backtest mode. Alright, so let's see, let me clear all those little markers off, and so definitely that one. And it's hard to tell, but it looks like these bars oh no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong indicator here. I'll make the ALMA just a little thicker, so I'm looking at the right one. Okay. Yeah. Alright, so just to mark a couple of bars. Okay. So let's get BloodHound open and we'll build this. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we were going to build an exit trade when the bar body touches the ALMA indicator. So what we're doing essentially is we're comparing the prices of the bar to the ALMA indicator. All right. Hold on. I'm just going to make one more adjustment here. Let's just. Okay, there. I think that's a little easier to focus on the right moving average. So we're going to be comparing the various prices of the bar to the ALMA indicator. So if we're doing comparisons, we're going to use the comparison solver for that. So to know if the body is touching our moving average, what that's going to mean is let's see, either the here. Let me make this a little wider. So we have the open of the bar, and this is the open of this bar. So if the open, right, is less than our indicator, then the close of the price needs to be greater than the indicator, right? So we need these two conditions to both be true. So the open has to be less than the indicator, and the close has to be greater than the indicator. Right? So that's how that works for an up bar. For a down bar, we actually have the open greater than the indicator, and the close is less than the indicator value. All right, so we're going to use the open price and the closing price. And back here, we're going to ignore the high price. So we don't care about using the high price, because using the high price would be looking for the wicks. Let's see. So, and let's get another couple of requirements set up here. So let's just say, so let's say we're in a short trade here, right? We're in a short trade. So we're going to want to generate a long signal to close out a short trade. We want to generate a long signal, right? So we want a long signal on this bar. So let's see. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna have to build a couple of comparison solvers to do this. So we'll start with one. So we'll build the we'll build the exit signal. So the exit signal is going to be a long signal to close out a short trade. All right, so we'll build the long signal here first. And so we're going to be comparing price, and we'll have to change our prices because we're going to be using the closing price and the open price, and we're going to compare that to the ALMA indicator. And I'm just using the default settings. All right. So we're comparing price to our ALMA indicator down here. So now, we need to go in here and make sure that we get the correct the correct prices set in here. Let's see. There's a couple of ways I can do this. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to use just 2 comparison solvers to do this. There's a couple of ways I could accomplish this. I could use this one comparison solver and then use a function node. But yeah, I think I'll use 2 comparison solvers. All right. And all right, let's see here. So we're generating a long signal. So price type for long. Let's see. We'll just use the closing price since this is already set to the closing price. And we can see here on this bar, our closing price is greater than our ALMA MA. It's greater than it. So, and yeah, we can see that we're already getting a long output here. See how we're already getting a long output? But you'll notice we're also, let me grab another arrow, right? So we're getting a long output on this bar, but we're also getting long outputs on these other bars here, right? And that's because the closing price is above our moving average. But so we need to do the second part of the condition, was to make sure that the open price is less than our indicator, right? The open price needs to be less. And so once we check the open price of the bars, we'll see that the open price of this bar is not less than our indicator, right? And so that'll remove the long outputs from here. So what I'm going to need to do is grab another comparison solver. And once again, we're going to use price, but this time for the long output, instead of the closing price, we're going to use the open price. Set this to the open price. All right, and if you look, you see how this is backwards? So this bar has no output, but this is the bar that we actually want a long output. But the other bars have a long output. Right, so these other bars have a long output because the open price is above our moving average, right? But on this bar, where there is no output, the open price is below. And so that's so the reason why we have a long output here and no output on this bar is because of the way our long outputs are set. So let me stretch this open a little bit. So instead of A being greater than B, right? So remember, A is our open price. So, oops, I double-clicked on that by accident. Let's set that back to open price. There we go. So right now, the long output that we're using is we're looking for the open price to be greater than the indicator. And let me go in here and set the indicator up. So let's go put our ALMA in there instead of the SMA. Okay. So instead of looking for the open price to be greater than the ALMA, which is what's happening, right? So when the open price of the bar is greater than the ALMA, we're getting a long output, but that's not what we want. So let's turn those off. What we want is when A is less than B. So we want the open price less than our indicator. So we're going to set that to 1. And now we have a long output here. And there's no long output here, right? So it took two solvers. One solver is comparing the closing price of the bar. The other solver is looking at the open price of the bar. Right? So this solver is looking at the closing price of the bar. And this solver is looking at the open price of the bar. And so we need both of those conditions to be true at the same time to get the correct result. So we're going to use an AND node. And the AND node makes sure that both of those conditions are true at the same time. So we use our AND node. And so there's our long output only on that bar. And you notice there's no long output on any of the other bars here. Let's shrink this up a little bit. So if we take a look, right, here's another up bar that crossed the moving average, right, across the blue line, and we got a long output. And there's no long output during any of these other bars. Alright, so we got the exit signal, right, for a short trade, right? So remember, we built the exit signal for the short trade first. So now let's build the exit signal for a long trade. So let's say we're in a long trade here. So we're in a long trade here, and so we're going to want to build a short signal here. So let's build a short signal for this bar to exit a long trade. Right, and you can see that there's all kinds of short outputs here. So we definitely don't have something set up right. So let's analyze this a little closer. Right, so we need the open price needs to be above our indicator, and the close price needs to be below our indicator. And we're generating, remember, we're generating a short signal. So let's go back to our solvers, right? So you can see our when we're looking at these price types, we have a price type for the short output, right? Both of these solvers have a price type for the short output. And if we look at the upper solver, right, the price type for the short output, it's set to the closing price. And the one down here is also set to the closing price, right? So one of them needs to be set to the open price. And let's see. So let's take a look at how this solver is set up. So this is looking at the closing price, and for the short output, so if the closing price is less than our indicator, right, so A is less than B. So A, right, indicator A is the closing price, is less than B, which is our moving average. So right here we got our closing price is less than our moving average, right? And so our closing price on all these bars is less than our moving average, so that's why we're getting a short output. So that's right, set up. That's set up correctly. Let's take a look at the other solver here. So this solver for the short, right, for price type short, it's set to closing price. So let's set this to the open as well. So we'll set this to open, and let's connect that up here. So we're going to take a look at this guy. So we have this set to open, and so for the short output, if the so if we look at our short output, what we're saying is A less than B. So if the open is less than our indicator, we're getting a short output. But the open is actually greater than our indicator. So we're looking for the open to be greater than our indicator, not less. So you can see down here, these other bars, the open is actually below or less than our indicator. And so that's why we're getting a short output here. So what we want to do is turn those outputs off and use the other output here. All right. So you notice here, let me just kind of point something out here. You notice how, see how our outputs are kind of mirrored, right? So if the long is all the way at the bottom, the shorts are all the way at the top. So typically, when you're setting up a comparison solver, typically you do want your outputs kind of opposite of each other. That's usually how things end up when using the comparison solver. And if we look at the other comparison solver up on top here, same thing, right? Our long outputs are on top and our short outputs are at the bottom here, right? So you see how they're kind of mirrored each other? They're kind of mirrored across this, you know, across this gray bar. So, so now, okay, so it looks like, you know, I think we've got our solver set up for the open price now, right? So we changed our short output. So now let's take a look at the AND node and see what we get. Okay, so there we go. So that's it. So there is all of the exit signals. Okay, so Mark has added a little clarification to his question. So Mark's goal is to close the trade before having to wait for a reversal candle to close. So Mark, okay, so if you want to, so then you do actually want to stop. So if you want to get out of the trade before the candle closes, then that actually is a stop. So what you're wanting to do is technically impossible. So, you know, you're saying that you don't want to exit if the wick touches, but you want to exit if the body touches. Well, how do you know that the body's going to touch before the bar closes? Right? You have to ask yourself, how do you know that the body's going to be touching before, you know, so let's see if I have some data coming in here. Let's see, I wish if price could come down on this, that'd be helpful. But let's just say, let's just take this here. So when well, actually even better yet, let's just take this bar here. So I'll use this dot to kind of represent the bar here. So if price is moving up, making this wick, how do you know that, you know, before the bar closes, how do you know, actually, let's see, no, that's not a good example. Now, let me go back to this, reversal bar. Yeah, okay. So going back to this reversal bar, Mark. So let's just say, you know, the bar, let's pretend that the bar just opened. And so price is moving up, right? It's moving up. And so how do you know that the bar is going to move back down to form a wick before it closes? You know, that's the question I'd like to know, is how do you know that, right? So if you could tell me, you know, that while this bar is building, that it's actually going to build just a wick and still be a down bar, versus knowing that it's going to be a reversal bar. If you could tell me that, tell you what, I could make you $1 million. You know, we'd all be wealthy traders if we could predict what a bar is going to do before it closes. right? So the only way you know that this is going to be a reversal up bar is you have to wait for the bar to close. Otherwise, how do you know it's going to close up versus just making a wick? That's predicting the future. So what you're wanting to do is technically impossible, unless you've got a time machine or something like that. Which I'm sure some of the wealthier trading firms are working on that. But for now, there is no way to do what you want to do there, Mark. Unless you've got some kind of formula, that's going to tell you, if a bar is going to reverse or if it's just going to form a wick and keep going down. So if you can answer that part, then I can probably show you how to do that in BloodHound. All right. So Mark, I don't know, maybe you've got an indicator that's helping you identify, better if a bar is going to reverse versus a bar forming a wick. If you've got some kind of indicator that's trying to predict those type of things, then we probably, we would need to, add that other indicator into this, system, into this BloodHound system to do that type of looking. So let's see. Mark is asking, is the result the same? Let's see. The result of what, Mark? I guess. So if I understand your question right, the result is that this exit logic will exit whenever the bar reverses. So you could just, this is a complex, this is a complex way of doing this. So if you're just using Renko bars like this, then essentially you're just looking for reversal bars to exit you. At least with these indicator settings here. Probably just in general. I think due to just how Renko bars function, you can see that when Renko bars are in backtest mode, you get you only get three types of bars, right? You get bars that are either have no body, or you get a bar, right, that has a 2-tick body, or you get reversal bars, right? There's really only three different types of bars for a backtest Renko, right? And that's just because of how Renkos function. I guess, let me back this. Let me back up here. You can. Sometimes you get weird price gaps. So you see. Sometimes you do get some wicks here on these bodiless bars, and I guess if you get a price gap, you could get some different types of bars. Depends if price is gapping around or not. During the day, oil usually doesn't have much of a price gap between the bid and the ask, so you get pretty smooth looking price movement, on oil. But in overnight sessions, I guess price probably would be gapping around. So kind of going back to my to the original question. I don't think your ALMA indicator would ever stop you out before price actually reverses. So just because the indicator always seems to be a couple of ticks above the bodies of these Renko bars. So probably just a much simpler exit logic would just be to use the inflection solver. All right, so we have an inflection solver here. So let's put that on here. We'll connect that up. And we're going to look at the inflection of price. So we'll set our type to price. And if we look at the chart now, right, we see we get the exact same thing. Right, whenever the bar reverses, we're getting a signal here that would close out the trade. So, I guess this, what we built over here I guess it's really would be more functional if you were using like a tick chart or a minute chart, or maybe a range chart, volume chart, something like that. But I guess this complex of logic really doesn't seem to be necessary for a Renko type chart. I would just go with something simpler here. Just look for price, the price inflection. Yeah. All right. So, Mark, I hope I answered your question. Did I give you enough information to kind of answer your question there? Just let me know. Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, just as a general rule, I do get, Mark's not the only one that kind of asks questions like that. And, questions like this all come about because what we see historically on the chart really does give us kind of a sense of illusion versus what when you're actually trading, right? So actually this is a perfect example. So price is coming down here, and so how do we know that this bar is going to close down and reverse or pop back up like it did? We don't know in real time what's going to happen, but when we look on a chart, it's already happened. So it kind of gives us this false sense of of knowing, of being able to know what's going to happen. So when you're looking at obviously when we're trying to kind of test our ideas out, all we have is historical charts where the bar's already closed. So you got to keep in mind, that when you're trying to do something early, like if you're trying to exit a trade early before the bar closes, you have to ask yourself, well, how would I know what direction the bar is going to close in? Something like that. How do I know what the bar is going to do before it's going to actually do it? Because you are seeing, everything in hindsight when everything has already happened. So it does, it does give us that sense of what's the right word? Not necessarily a sense of illusion, but kind of like a sense that we can predict what's going to happen. All right, let's move on here. So Jim would like to know, how would you combine 2 or 3 correlated markets on BloodHound but still be able to minimize the impact on the CPU? Let's see. How would you combine 2 or 3 correlated markets on BloodHound but still minimize the impact on the CPU? I'd say you can't. Yeah, so Jim, you really can't. So what Jim was talking about, so okay, actually I'm going to make an assumption here because Jim uses the word correlated markets. So to me, a correlated market is a FX market, right? Currency pairs are correlated markets. But the bottom line is, Jim's talking about if you're wanting to access different market data or basically different instruments, you have to just add a chart on here, and you can add charts from from other instruments. So let's see, oil. I don't think oil really has another correlated instrument or market, but let me delete that for now. But let's go to the ES, just to kind of make it an assumption here. Let's go to the ES, and all right, just a moment. ES data always takes the longest to load up when you're using a tick-based bar type. So yeah, these Renko bars always take longer to load up on the ES. I should have switched it to a minute chart. So let me just switch to a minute chart. So you can see minute charts load up a lot faster for the ES than a tick-based chart. Alright, so we have the ES, and I think it can easily be argued that the YM, right, the Dow, is closely correlated to the ES. Those two indexes move pretty close to each other, so we can consider that to be correlated. So with BloodHound, when I add this extra chart on here, I can go in here and take a look at the YM instrument, and I can look at the 1 minute of the YM instrument, and so I guess I'm assuming that's what Jim's talking about how can we combine or use 2 or 3 other correlated markets, and let's see, so that's right, so that's one correlated market. Let's say at least it's my opinion that the NASDAQ isn't really correlated closely enough with the ES, with the S&P or the Dow, but I'd say it could be argued that also the NASDAQ as well is somewhat correlated, right? So usually all 3 of these, when the general market's going up, all 3 of them generally go up. So here we have, we'll just say for example, our default time frame is the ES 1 minute. We have a YM, which I think is fairly closely correlated to the ES, and the NASDAQ is usually correlated to the other 2. So if we wanted to use other instruments, you just had to add them on the BloodHound, and that's that. There is no way to minimize the impact on your CPU when using multiple instruments. So one thing I would suggest, here's one thing that you can, there's the only thing that I can think of to minimize CPU usage. So so my chart is an ES 1 minute, so my default time frame is an ES 1 minute. So the one thing I would recommend that you do not do is essentially don't put a 1 minute chart on here if your default is already a 1 minute chart, right? So this 1 minute chart is going to, since there's no instrument selected, it's going to go to the ES, right? So the chart itself is an ES, so this is going to be a 1 minute of the ES. So the default time frame and this 1 minute chart that I added are one and the same, right? They're both 1 minute. So this would put unnecessary CPU requirements onto NinjaTrader. So NinjaTrader, quite literally, it's going to be quite literally, NinjaTrader is already calculating this chart, this 1 minute data on the chart, and then since BloodHound's is also asking for a 1 minute chart, that's going to tell NinjaTrader, well, hey, you know what? Go out and build a secondary 1 minute chart. so that BloodHound can get this 1 minute chart. And so therefore NinjaTrader is basically running 2 1-minute charts internally. NinjaTrader is building 2 1-minute charts. And so that I guess would be putting an additional impact onto the CPU, as Jim phrases it. So just kind of keep in mind that whatever your default time frame is, set to on the chart, don't add it again as a secondary time frame onto BloodHound, right? So we'll just remove that there. So actually, I'll remove all of these on here. So, all right. So I think that addresses Jim's question. When using multiple time frames on the higher time frame, do I need to wait for the close of the bar to calculate my entry in BloodHound? Let's see, with my lower time frame. Let's see. Or can she use the lower time frame bar close and the current position of the bar on the higher time frame? Let's see. So, all right. So what Marcy is asking, so this is Marcy's second question. All right. So let's see. We've got a 1 minute chart here, and I had a daily chart. Oh yeah. Let's see. Well, yeah, I still have a daily chart. So here's our ES daily chart. So let's say, so Marcy's asking, can she access the closing price of today's let's see. Actually, let me read Marcy's question again, because actually it doesn't quite make sense. Well, okay. So Marcy's question again is, when using multiple time frames, on the higher time frame, do I need to wait for the close of the bar to calculate my entry in BloodHound with her lower time frame? So you do. Yeah, let me not use the daily. Instead of using the daily, let me just pull up a 10-minute chart or something like that. So all right. So let's just say Marcy's going to use a 10-minute higher time frame. All right, so this bar here is still building. So, so really the answer to Marcy's question, is, does she have access to this bar that's building when using multiple time frames? That all depends on the NinjaTrader setting. So that all depends on how you have BloodHound set. Right? So I'm in the indicators window looking at BloodHound, and you see this setting here, calculate on bar close. So this is a NinjaTrader setting. So when this is set to true, then what that means is you have to wait for the bar to close before you can access that bar data. Right? So in other words, NinjaTrader will not give you the closing price of this bar that's still building. NinjaTrader will give you the closing price of the bar that's closed, but NinjaTrader will not give you any price data on the bar that's building. So right, so with calculate on bar close set to true, which that's the standard setting for indicators, with the set to true, you can only access the bar that's closed. You can only access data for the bar that's closed. So if you set this to false, then NinjaTrader will give you the price data on the bar that's building. All right, so for the bar that's building. So you'll have to change your calculate on bar close setting to false to get the bar data of the 10-minute bar as the bar for the bar that's building. To get the data for the bar that's building on a higher time frame, you have to set this to false. So, right, and that also means that BloodHound is going to be using, if I set that to false, then that also applies to the chart that BloodHound is on, right? So BloodHound's on this 1 minute chart. So NinjaTrader is going to give you the closing price. Well, NinjaTrader is going to be given the price data for the bar that's currently building as well. So NinjaTrader will give you the price data for both of the bars that are building. Oh. Let's see. All right, I think that answers Marcy's question. Well, okay. Yeah. So Mark, the answer, can you get out if price? Yeah, I guess if price comes down and touches your moving average, can you get out, right then and there, instead of waiting for the bar to close? So the answer is yes and no. So this is going to go back to that calculate on bar close NinjaTrader setting. Right, so let's see. Yeah, let me give you a simple example here. So I'm going to take BloodHound and so where'd that setting go? There it is. Okay, so I'm going to take BloodHound and I'm going to take calculate on bar close and I'm going to set it to false. And I'll build you a little example here of how calculate on bar close, how it affects your indicators and how it affects your strategies. So let me go into BloodHound now, and I'm going to make a new logic template. So yeah, oh, so there we go. All right, so I'm just going to generate a little calculate on bar close example here. So I'm just going to take the bar direction solver to do this. Right, so the bar direction solver is a pretty simple solver, right? It just tells you the direction of the bar. So you can see all up bars are long, all down bars are short. So let's look at the bar that's building here, and hopefully price will come down for us. Let's see, geez, price was bouncing around quite a bit. Oh, there we go. So okay, so here's the bar that's building. So you notice right now it's a doji. So BloodHound's no output because there is no body. There is no bar direction, right? Because it's a doji. And then as soon as the bar has a body, right? It just gave us a down bar, and then we got a short output, right? So you can see how BloodHound is updating in real time. And so now price just went up, and it gave us a long output, right? So you can see how BloodHound's output is changing in real time based on an up bar, a flat bar, or a down bar. All right, no output when it's a doji, right? That's just the simple functionality of this bar direction solver. Right, so to detect when let's see. So let me pull up that screenshot again. All right. So if you set Raven with that calculate on bar close to false, then we can get BloodHound to update in real time. And so when BloodHound crosses your ALMA indicator, we could generate an exit signal in real time. But keep in mind that also affects your entry signals, also get generated in real time. So your entry signals aren't going to wait for the bar to close. So that calculate on bar close function affects the indicator and the strategy as a whole. There's no way to do one, half of your indicator on bar close and the other half of your condition on real-time data. So you can't mix and match the two. So we did try to do that with BloodHound in a much earlier version, and it just didn't work out. So it just didn't function properly. So we had to remove that feature. We tried to get around it with NinjaTrader, but you just get disastrous results when you try and do that. So what I could do, let's see. Let me throw up another example here. So I'm going to grab a crossover solver to generate an exit signal in real time. Oh, excuse me. So we'll generate exit signals in real time here. So I'm going to we're going to look for price crossing that ALMA indicator. And let's see. Let me adjust the ALMA indicator. I'm going to also turn it to calculate on bar close, set it to false as well. So the bar just crossed that ALMA, so you can see we're getting a short signal there. And it doesn't look like price is going to move up enough to to show us that the short signal would go away if price moved up above that ALMA indicator. Let's see. Who knows? Maybe price might move up enough to do that for us. Oh, maybe. Let's see. Just a couple more ticks. All right, there we go. Yeah, so we can see when price crosses above, the blue indicator, it's giving us a long. So we could, that could be your exit signal to exit a short position as price crosses that in real time. So that is possible there, Mark. But of course, let me just reiterate that that's going to also affect your entry signals. Your entry signals are also going to be entered when your entry signals are going to be your entry signals will happen before the bar closes, right? So that might give you undesirable results when you do that. All right, guys, I think we're done for the day.